So you've written your Cornell Notes with all the advice you saw on YouTube. Now what do you do with them? In this video, I'm going to show you how to use your Cornell Notes to actually study and prepare for your upcoming exams. In my opinion, the best notes serve as a study guide. This is why I freaking love Cornell Notes, because the way that Cornell Notes have you set up your notes forces you to ask yourself questions about the material, which studies have shown time and time again that when you're forced to pull information out of your brain without your notes in front of you, it helps you to retain the information longer. Now, I don't use the traditional style of Cornell Notes. You know what I'm talking about, the framework where you have the middle column, the side column, and the bottom column. I actually use a modified version of Cornell Notes, and in my video, How to Take Notes for Online Classes, I walk you through a modified Cornell note-taking method that helps my students really hone in on what to focus on when they're studying from lecture, they're reading, PowerPoints, etc. So once your notes are done, they should look something like this. Yes, all of these are Cornell Notes. And I have a video coming next week that's going to show you how to customize your Cornell Notes for all the different subjects that you might have in your college courses. But I promise you, what your notes look like doesn't really freaking matter. The most important thing is what's actually in your notes, because we want to be able to use your notes as a retrieval practice tool or a tool that you can use to quiz and recall. Because again, this has been scientifically proven to be the most effective way to study. I could go into all of the science around it, but I'm not. There are a ton of videos on YouTube where people have already done recap videos on that. I'll just link them down below so that you can go knock yourself out if you're someone that needs that type of information in order to trust something. Because in this video, I just want to teach you what you want to know. How do you use your notes to actually study? It really is as simple as taking out your notes. And if you've written them in the format that I teach, which is typically a question and answer format, you ask yourself the question out loud and then you answer it. Okay, so I'm going to show you what retrieval / quiz and recall looks like in practice. So when it was time for me to sit down and have a quiz and recall / retrieval practice session, which you'll see later in the video how I would map this out in my calendar, I would literally just sit down with my notes. Oftentimes, I actually handwrote my notes. I prefer to handwrite my notes, but this is just an example of typed up notes that I happen to have. So as you can see, they're in a modified Cornell method. I have my questions up here and then the answers to the questions down below. So I would sit down, I would cover up the answers, and I would ask myself out loud the question: what is the anatomy and physiology of the urinary system? And from the top of my head, I would list them out. So we have the bladder, we have the urethra, we have the kidneys, we have, my mind is going blank. So in this case where I couldn't remember what the other sections were, then I would mark this question as wrong or something that I would need to go back to. So I then would take it a step further, because if I did not get the question right, I need to figure out why. Am I confused about something? Do I not understand something? Do I need to find a better way to actually memorize it? And based off of what I came up with, I would actually ask myself, like, why am I having a hard time understanding this or memorizing this or learning this? Once I answered that question, I would then go and do what I needed to do to help me to understand it, to fill in that knowledge gap. So it might be that I needed to watch a video to actually visually see how all of this functions. Or maybe I just need to come up with a mnemonic to help me remember all of the different parts that make up the urinary system. Or maybe I need to create a story for myself, or maybe I just need to label it out on a picture. I would do the work that needed to be done in order for me to fully understand this enough so that I could then answer questions about it on the exam. If I got the question right, I would just move on to the next question. So what are some factors affecting nutrition? So growth and development, physiological variables, personal habits, muscle tone and activity, fluid balance, disease conditions, medications. Again, if I got it right, I would just keep it moving to the next question. Whenever I got something wrong, the most important thing that you need to do is you need to fill in those knowledge gaps. You got to ask yourself, why am I having a hard time? Is it that I'm not understanding it? Do I just need to like memorize this in a different way? Do I need to map it out in a different way? Whatever you got to do. Do I need to get a tutor? Because I'm like, no matter how many times I'm reading this, it just is not making sense. You got to ask yourself that question, because that filling in the knowledge gap is the reason why we do quiz and recall. We want to find out what we don't know so that we can get the help and support we need to make sure that we understand it. It really is that freaking simple. The purpose of spaced repetition, or what is also called quiz and recall, is to see what you know and, more importantly, what you don't know yet, so that you can do the work to fill in the knowledge gaps prior to getting to the exam. So let's talk about what this looks like in practice. When should you start using your notes to study? Now, there's a thing called the forgetting curve. It was discovered by a guy named something Ivanhouse. I can't remember his first name right now, but he basically tracked and plotted how long it took him to forget something after he initially learned it. And what he found is that very rapidly, if you are not consistently reviewing the information, after about 3 days, you completely forget it. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're regularly reviewing, testing yourself on the material. And it doesn't have to be for long periods of time. Honestly, 15 minutes up to an hour is enough. Trust me. So let's say you have a class that meets Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And on Monday, they're covering chapter 1 material. And you've written your notes for that material. You want to test yourself on that material 1 to 2 days later. So either that Tuesday or the Wednesday. And again, you don't have to spend a lot of time here. 15 to 60 minutes, as many minutes as it takes for you to ask yourself all the questions that you created from that chapter. And this really should be rapid fire, because you either know it or you don't. And we really want to be spending our time on the material that we don't know and asking ourselves deeper questions to find out what it is about that particular section that's causing us confusion or causing us to forget. And we're going to want to really hone in on figuring that out. Okay, so let me show you what it would look like to schedule out my studying with my Cornell Notes. So let's say I have a class Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. On the Monday, I would be carving out time to do my learning, my initial learning of the material. So it would either be by attending lecture or reading the textbook. So in this case, I'm going to say reading the textbook. So chapter 1, reading and notes completed for bio. Okay. Then I would want to test myself, quiz, retrieve on that content 1 or 2 days later. So on Wednesday, I'm going to carve out time. Doesn't have to be 2 hours. An hour is enough. I just picked anything. So I'm going to do quiz and recall with chapter 1 bio notes. And then let's say that Friday we start a new chapter. So I'm going to do chapter 2 reading and notes for bio, which means that 1 or 2 days later, I want to be doing quiz and recall for chapter 2 notes. I then want to make sure that I am doing another round of quiz and recall of these notes 3 to 7 days before the exam. So I typically would set this up where I'm quiz and recalling initially right after I learn the content. And then if I don't have time, which this sometimes happens, to review it again the Monday before we start a new chapter, I might not touch this material until the week of the exam. And then on the week of the exam, I'm making sure to quiz myself on all of the chapters that we've had. So let's say that I had an exam on the Friday, I would just have 3 to 7 days focus on just quizzing and recalling on the chapter. So if I were to do 5 days out, then that means that all of my notes, all of my Cornell notes would need to be done at the latest by Friday the 8th. And then I would be spending Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday just doing quiz and recall, as well as filling in knowledge gaps for that exam. And then Thursday, I would sort of leave blank. I wouldn't either do any studying on that day or would use that time to do additional filling of knowledge gaps. So maybe last minute tutoring sessions or last minute office hours types of things. But if you study in this way where you're initially studying at the beginning and then you're doing another round of quiz and recall and knowledge gap filling the week of the exam, and that's all you're focused on, the likelihood that you're going to do well on the exam is a lot higher. And if you are just doing this rapid fire, like I told you, where you're spending most of your time on filling in the knowledge gaps, this part of studying should take you 15 to 60 minutes max. And I have a whole video explaining the time breakdown for note taking, for the quiz and recall, for the filling in the knowledge gaps. And that video is going to be linked right here. Now, the key to all of this working is writing your notes ahead of time and scheduling out the time to do the quiz and recall. And I know that so many of us struggle with procrastination and waiting until the last minute to try to get all our notes written and memorize everything, which is why I want to tell you about my free guide called the Anti-Procrastination Guide for the college woman who's brilliant and tired of failing. Because there's a reason why we procrastinate. And it has nothing to do with discipline, motivation, or self-sabotage. Because nobody wakes up in the morning and tries to map out how they can ruin their life today. This guide explains why we procrastinate and shows you with practical tools that you can put into practice today how to move through your procrastination tendencies, because they're not going away. You're always going to have that urge. It's just human nature. I want to show you how to navigate your way through it so that it happens less. And so that when you catch yourself procrastinating, you're able to get yourself back on track a little bit quicker. Now, if you watched this video and you thought to yourself, I need to learn how to take better notes, then the next video that you want to watch is how to take notes with the Cornell method. And that is on the screen right now.